webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Call the meeting to order. First order of business is approval of the minutes of April 24th, 2021.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? Okay.
I
Madam
apologize.
Clerk, we need a roll call
call.
first. You know, it's not on the agenda. I won't remember. But you did mention it last month. So let's deviate then, if you would please conduct a roll call.
Board Member Wood,
Here.
Board Member Burris,
Here.
Board Member Carr,
Here.
Board Member Driggers,
Here.
Board Member Thurston, Board Member Rodwell,
Here.
Board Member Jones.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to approval of minutes. There is a motion and a second.
And I'm going to apologize. Who motioned?
I think the motion came from Mr. Driggers and the second was
Thank you.
Mr. Rodwell. So if you would call a roll for the motion to approve the minutes.
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burris,
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item of business is public comments. So there's an opportunity here for anyone to speak on something that is not on the current agenda or something that we're not going to be taking up. Anyone wish to speak? Okay, that closes public comment. I'd like to deviate from the agenda for just a moment. There was a movement earlier this week, Monday night, by the commission to start moving towards in-person only meetings. And matter of fact, our next meeting of the commission will be in person only. Because as the mayor stated, there were no public hearings at the next commission meeting, so he didn't see a reason to do it. So that's got me thinking what we're able to do, what we want to do here. And the reason I'm breaking from the agenda and talking about it now is I'd like to get input from everybody in the room. If there's anyone that feels like we should continue to do these hybrid meetings, and hybrid requires, of course, David over there, a technician, so that we're both on the internet, so to speak, and of course in person. So obviously I prefer to move towards in-person only meetings, but I don't know if there's elements of our among our shareholders that feel like they need to be virtual for maybe health reasons, safety reasons, gosh, I don't even know what. So I'm just going to create the opportunity for a moment. If anyone wants to comment on changing to in-person meetings. So, and you don't have to be shy. Don't be shy. Just come up and speak on anyone. So is there any thoughts on it? Any concerns about switching to in-person? Yeah. Do anyone in the audience know of people that are not here because they can't attend an in-person meeting? Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have any idea how many people tune in online to the meeting? I'm just curious from a.
So I've not taken into account. I did talk to Yvonne Fry after the commission meeting, and she said they got about 320 views.
Wow.
For a commission meeting, but that's not necessarily live. Those are people that might be able to look at it later. I think the reason we do the hybrid is really for, I think, for people that maybe aren't comfortable or feel safe to be here in person.
We have about 4 people watching live.
Wow. Thank you, 4 people. That's about 4 more than I thought.
Well, do we know, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess one of my questions is, do we know what the extra expense is for the city to host it? Is there a greater expense to that?
I mean, there's an expense, you have to pay for captioning.
Okay.
For the service, we do go through a third-party vendor for actually streaming on Facebook and YouTube. And of course, it wouldn't really affect this, but for commission meetings, we do have to, myself, I do get paid for coming in.
Okay.
There's additional hours. But that won't affect you guys because this is during business hours, so. But it's-
Understood.
there's a cost.
I think it'd be good to know that cost just to make the decision,
Yeah.
final decision, because, I mean, the more accessible we can be and the commission can be, I think the better, but too, I also realize if you've only got 4 people tuning in, then maybe it's not worth the additional expense, but I think it'd be good to know all the facts before we make a final decision.
I like that it's able to stream, on Facebook. I've actually caught a couple more city commission meetings that way where I've listened to it on Facebook. I don't know if it's, if we should host it there or YouTube or not, but I'm with you, Doug. If we can find out what that costs, I think it'd be helpful. But I'll also say this, my parents are in their 80s and late 70s. If my father had a public hearing coming up, he just got his COVID shot, so he may be more likely to come now that he had his COVID shot versus somebody else. But there still may be somebody who hasn't had a shot yet, is not vaccinated. So perhaps maybe look at doing this another month or 2 until we've got more people vaccinated. I know that has something to do with it. So, but if we could possibly find out the cost, it would probably be helpful too. So.
All right, we'll try to make a firmer decision next month. So I'll bring up the discussion again, and staff will you be able to come up with some cost estimates or savings if we switch to in-person only? Yeah. Okay. And again, anyone in the audience, if you hear of someone that is unable to attend because of whatever personal issues they have, would you please let our staff know, and they'll relay it to me so we can factor it into our decision next month. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the diversion. We have a legislative public hearing. It's PC CPA 2008, east side of Wilder and Sam Allen Roads, Grimes property.
Good morning, Mark Hensel,
Morning.
Planning Commission staff.
It's good to see you again.
It is.
You've been a voice for a few meetings, so good to see you.
That's correct, and it'll be the same for the commission meeting next month.
Yeah. Well, you're looking good. You're looking good.
I gained a few pounds. I'm here to present to you one plan amendment this morning, PCCPA 20-08. If I could have the next slide.
One second.
This shows you the general location of the plan amendment. As you can see, it is up in the northeast quadrant of Plant City. It's indicated by the star on the Plant City vision map. It is an area that is designated for future residential development on the vision map, and it is in close proximity to the major commercial activity center that is located on Park Road and Interstate 4. More specifically, the site is at the southeast corner of East Sam Allen Road and North Wilder Road. I can have the next slide. This shows you an aerial of the site. Again, it is on this southeast corner of Wilder and Sam Allen Road. You can see the development pattern around this area currently is agriculture and also some large lot single family homes. I will point out that I presented to you some time ago, just to the west is the new location for the South Florida Baptist Hospital, which was approved by the commission just recently as far as the plan amendment zoning. If I could have the next slide. So by way of a little bit of background, this was privately initiated. This will require a transmittal hearing to go to the Department of Economic Opportunity, as it is over 10 acres, coming in at almost 33 acres. Currently has a land use of Hillsborough County Residential 1. It has completed the annexation process, so it is part of the city currently. And they have requested Plant City Residential 9. If I could have the next slide. This shows you the land use map as it stands today. Actually, there's a slight modification I need to point out, but you can see it is indicated by the white color. That shows you that it is currently part of Plant City, but has not gone through the plan amendment process. So it does still have the land use of Hillsborough County Residential 1. You can see to the east, there is where it makes connection with the city, that is Plant City Residential 4 units an acre. The periphery of the north, west, and south is either Hillsborough County Residential 1 or Hillsborough County Residential 2. Also, I will note that the hospital site, which has a commercial designation, is just to the west. Also, there is an area, which I don't believe I have a cursor here, but that's area of Hillsborough County Residential 1 that is just next to the that commercial area has also been changed. The land use designation has been changed to commercial as well, to make the site whole for the development of that new major medical facility. And the maps have not been changed yet, but they will be according to the actions of the city commission. If I can have the next slide. And this shows you how the land use would change if it was approved by the city commission ultimately to that designation of Hillsborough County Residential 9, which allows 9 units per acre. Not all land uses necessarily entitle you to all the uses that are allowed under that. And if you look in our staff report, we do feel it is consistent if it's developed as single family detached, villas, or townhomes. This designation also allows multifamily development and also some neighborhood commercial uses. We do not feel that's appropriate at this location. And it is our understanding that the applicant is not applying for that, they're actually applying for townhomes. So I'll go a little bit more further into why we feel it's consistent on some latter slides. Next slide, please. So what are the potential impacts? Again, with this current land use, it could have 32 dwelling units or up to 30,000 square feet of neighborhood commercial uses. This would go up to 295 dwelling units and 87,500 square feet of neighborhood commercial uses. Again, we don't feel this is an appropriate location for those uses and would recommend to this body that they would not be considered as part of the zoning, which my understanding is the applicant has not applied for such. Next slide, please. This is an aerial of the site. As you can see, it was an agricultural use at this time and still is. And you can see some of the surrounding development, both agriculture and single family detached. Next slide. This shows you the intersection of East Sam Allen Road and North Wilder Road. Of course, this road will be extended where you see that sign of requiring the driver to turn left or right. And that will be the major access to the facility. The applicant has a presentation which they'll go into some more depth, but the major access is going to be off Sam Allen Road at this new portion of it and not off North Wilder Road. If I could have the next slide. This shows you the site some months ago when I went and took the photos. As you can see, it was between crops at that time, but it's predominantly in agricultural uses. Next slide. This is looking south on North Wilder Road. You can see the plan amendment site on the left-hand side of the photograph and some single-family homes on the right side. Next slide. And this is looking north on North Wilder Road. Again, you can see some of the single-family homes that are just to the south of the site, and the site is in the foreground up on the left. Next slide. Our staff did review this for consistency with the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan. Those goals, objectives, and policies are in full in your packets. And particularly, we felt it was consistent with neighborhood conservation, community development, growth management. We did talk to utilities directors as far as the capacity to serve the site with public utilities and saw no concerns. And also, it's in support of several housing policies that are in the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan. Next slide. There is a growing issue in this area concerning school capacity, and the school district's actually doing a study of the Plant City area to ensure that there will be adequate school facilities in this area in the future. Like with any other plant developments incorporating residential uses, If approved, they will need at the appropriate stage, either site plan or planning, go through that concurrency process with the Hogan County School District to ensure that there's adequate student stations for the population that they that are projected for the development. This will require transportation analysis as part of the zoning, and any improvements will be coordinated with Hillsborough County, as those are their facilities currently. And I already mentioned that we don't foresee any issues concerning water and wastewater capacity. Next slide. We took this to the Planning Commission on March 8th, and they did find it consistent with the Imagine 2040 Plant City Conference Plan. We're looking for a similar recommendation for you today. We have a transmittal hearing scheduled with the City Commission on April 26th, and we project that if the City Commission so chooses to transmit this to DEO, that we would have an adoption hearing sometime in the month of June or July of this year. If I could have the next slide. With that, our Planning Commission staff recommends that PCCPA 20-08 be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policy of the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan, and forward this recommendation to the Plant City Commission. Chairman, I stand for any questions you may have. Also, the applicant also has a PowerPoint to share with you to give you a better idea of the project that they propose. Thank you.
Tell me again about the density.
The density allowed in this would be 9 units an acre.
Right.
The applicant will be able to give you an idea a little bit more of the development. It is what they're proposing is townhomes. One thing we've been looking at, based on its close proximity to the new location of the South Florida Baptist Hospital, is we feel that there is a variety of housing that needs to be offered for those employees for that 24/7 operation. North Park Isles is just to the north, which should offer that opportunity for those single-family detached homes. There is a proposed project on the the west side of Park Road that's proposing multifamily that's going to be under consideration by the City Commission at their meeting on April 26th. And this offers another housing type within a quarter mile of that facility of townhomes. So we're reevaluating the densities that are in close proximity to that new regional medical facility.
What binds the owner to townhouses instead of going to a higher density if they choose? What binds them?
The zoning, which you will see the zoning.
So it's locked down. It's locked
The
down.
zoning will lock down the use and the density.
Okay.
And given, basically the land use is more of a broad brush expectation of what the land will develop with limits on it, but the zoning obviously gets down to the more finer detail, access points, the types of residents that will be offered, setbacks,
Okay.
and effects of that nature.
I'll recognize Mr. Burris.
One of the questions I have, as I've been here before, is how many people do we notice up and down Wilder Road and possibly Frontage Road and Park and Sam Allen Road that, we're taking a strawberry field with nothing on it. And much as I know that people own this property and would love to see landowners' rights continue, but have we had any contact with homes, with past a couple hundred feet, or is this, who all do we notice for this project in that area?
We notice everyone within 250 feet.
Okay.
So that does include the people that are in close proximity that are on North Wilder Road. Of course, we also notice more broad brush further afield by the legal advertisements in the Tampa Times.
Yeah, but just from my experience, sometimes people don't always look at that. And do we put a big sign up at all, possibly?
Currently, Plant City does not have in its procedures to incorporate or to place signs.
Yeah.
That is something that can be brought under consideration, but currently the City Commission does not require that.
Yeah, my challenge with all this is to let you know from my experience, if you live on Wilder Road, okay, and you live up toward Midway Road, you're certainly well past 200 feet. And if you live toward Frontage Road, you're certainly past 200 feet. And if you're going up and down Wilder Road, which, by the way, I have no clue how we're going to expand that road because of the homes that are so close to it. I'm just wondering if it's not in our best interest to just, I'm always concerned about citizens not getting their voices heard. That's always been my concern as we make, something going from 9 homes to this many it's a big change. Not saying the community doesn't need it. It's just always been a concern of mine. So
the Planning Commission is always receptive to other mechanisms as far as outreach is concerned. So if the city did want to consider in the future and this direction came from the City Commission, we would be happy to place signs.
Okay.
We place signs for other jurisdictions. I will say that the noticing that we do in Plant City is well in excess of what is required by state statute.
Okay, thank you.
How many more public hearings will there, of all kinds, will there be for citizens to have a chance to make a comment?
After this morning, there will be two.
Two?
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Please, I recognize Bonnie Carr.
This is very general to just the bigger plan. It sounds like this is agricultural space that's really not being used right now. I mean, is it just unplanted when you were taking this picture, or is this?
No, well, I mean, the applicant agent can probably tell you more, but I will say that it was being used for agricultural uses relatively recently, because when I was out there, you could see that the land had been tilled and prepped for another crop. So, but I mean, I think the applicant can weigh in on that more than I.
Okay. And what really poses my question is the overall comprehensive plan where we're trying to balance agriculture. And so I guess my real question is, are we keeping track of these conversions to know that that balance is not in jeopardy in the bigger scheme?
Yes, I mean, agriculture is important, particularly to our heritage. And we do feel that there is other lands that are not in production that are a little bit more further afield, not on the boundaries of the city, that will fill that role. I will say most, not necessarily this one, but most of the annexations that the city has entertained over the last a decade or so, most were in what I call passive agricultural uses, meaning pasture for cattle. Few have been actually active, as far as mainly strawberry or blueberry production. However, I can't say that is exclusively that way. There were some large areas that were historically used for agricultural production that are no longer in that use. One of the best examples is some of the large area for fancy farms down at Kynadon Road. But all in all, the vast majority have been dealing with pasture lands and kind of more that passive agricultural use. And we feel that what has been lost at this point, there are lands a little bit further afield that can fill that role. Again, the applicant may have some ideas on that.
Mr. Burr?
The schools, help me better understand, and maybe the board or the audience. Sounds like our schools are taxed in that area.
They're tax-based and, in all areas.
Right.
And the applicant and our staff is in close contact with the school district, and that's why they've embarked on this study. And actually, there is some thought, and I don't know if it's been completely hammered down yet, but there will be a school located on the Vieira site, which will take some of that capacity.
But that's on Midway Road.
Correct.
But we don't even know, do we know when that school would, is that going to get cut dirt in 5 years, 10 years, 2 years?
I'm afraid I don't know. That would have to be something that we would have to reach out to the school district. But as far as I know, it's not in their capital improvements program. So that's usually a 5-year document. So I would think it's further than 5 years out. But they are looking at that to provide those schools in a growth area just such as ours. And that's why they've embarked on this study. But they will not be allowed to develop fully if they're not able to meet school concurrency. And, sometimes it's not necessarily a school's place actually within the area to be served. If a school goes in another area, they shift the school district lines to allow all schools to be utilized at full capacity. So, for example, if a school is built in South Plant City, they would shift some of those schools, some of those students that are in more of the mid areas of Plant City to that, freeing up the schools that could serve this, right? It's a balancing act that the school district does across the whole county. But they've learned a lot from their missteps in South County, where they've run into this some time ago. And that's why they're embarking on this analysis, to be sure that those same mistakes aren't repeated in this Northeast area.
Okay.
Is it a safe assumption that this wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for the new hospital going in up there?
I think it would be difficult to argue the density without the commitment of that new major regional attractor at that area.
Okay.
And that's why this and other areas within, a half a mile, a quarter mile of that school site need to be reevaluated by our staff and Plant City staff. Much the way that the original hospital was, there are specific overlays that are around that current hospital that allow certain uses to be located to serve the hospital and to support the hospital that wouldn't typically be allowed because it is a special use.
Is the hospital taking a position on this particular request? Are they favored, or disfavored, or you don't know?
You could pose that question to the applicant because she was the representative for both.
Okay,
So when she comes up here, you might be able to bring that up and she might be able to respond to that.
okay.
So in closing, if this going back to the school situation, if we able to make this thing come to fruition in the next 2 or 3 years, it gets built out and all of a sudden there's an extra 75 kids, for example, it's under your thought process, those 75 kids will have a place to go to school. It's not like we're not going to be able to, we should be good in terms of school.
That is the requirement of concurrency. At the point where they're platting or doing the site plan, if there's not student stations, the applicant and the school district has to come up with a plan to serve those students and
Okay.
not just to move forward with development with no idea of how the students will be served.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just say, I personally have a concern with the hospital being new, that we're authorizing I'm going to call them exceptions, that wouldn't happen if the hospital wasn't there. And I just want to make sure we contain ourselves and don't create a precedent, so we end up with nothing but high density development in that whole area, you know. So I'm kind of listening and very attentively, because we may be steering a course that down the road we're going to wish we hadn't steered towards. You know. Do you understand that?
I do, and I think this property and also the property that is on the west side of Park Road are uniquely suited to serve the hospital. I don't think there's an infinite amount of properties within that area that meet that criteria.
Okay, good point. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. The applicant, would you step forward, please, and identify yourself?
Good morning. Nice to see you in person, Commissioner Carr. Elise Batzel, Stearns Weaver Miller, 401 East Jackson. I have not been sworn, but this is,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I have not been sworn, but I think.
I think it's not required on this item, so if you're on later, you'll have to be sworn in.
Yes, sir. Quickly, we'll just go through, I think you already know the location of the property based on Mark's presentation. The request is Res 9, and we'll talk a little bit more later in the presentation about why this particular location is particularly appropriate for this density. We heard your concerns, and I want to make sure that I adequately address that for you. The rezoning application is already filed and will be in process. One of the things I think you're aware that City Commission now does require the ultimate adoption of the comp plan and the rezoning at the same hearing. And so this comp plan amendment won't be approved until the rezoning is also the companion case at that same hearing. We are proposing 294 townhomes and related amenities. So there's no multifamily proposed. And I am going to show you that site plan just so that you understand what the ultimate development is going to look like on this particular piece of property. As you notice, this is a current future land use map. And I just want to point one thing out. That area in red, when we talk about why this location is appropriate, that is a designated commercial activity center under your comprehensive plan. And so the idea is that these are areas that are particularly appropriate for this type of development. And so the townhome property that we're proposing would be an appropriate transition from a more intense commercial development to townhomes and then ultimately to single family developments. Probably why Mark said he didn't feel like multifamily would be appropriate in this location because it might not provide the appropriate transition. This is the proposed future land use map. As you can see, the property outlined in green is the property that we're proposing to be Res 9. And so here's the actual project. This is a townhome project that will include 294 townhomes. One thing that's really important to note is if you look to the north, you'll see the future East Sam Allen Road extension. That is a 4-lane extension that's already in your plan. The developer will, at their expense, include this extension to their property. One thing that's important to note for the neighbors as well as for the board, is that we are not proposing any access off of Wilder Road. There's going to be an emergency access only with a knockbox, so that all of the traffic from the townhome development will be routed on Sam Allen, the more appropriate roadway. Again, you know, when you think about the justification, I want to step back just a little bit and talk about that location. It is in the area envisioned in your vision map for residential development. It is close to the interchange between I-4 and Park Road, again, which is considered this commercial activity center, where your plan says this is where we want this type of development to go. The Res 9 density will also promote compact development in that area adjacent to the commercial activity center, which is another provision in your comp plan that, you know, it encourages these more compact developments in areas that are appropriate to avoid sort of that sprawl into your agricultural lands. It is less than 1/4 mile from the new South Florida Baptist Hospital site. Obviously, your comprehensive plan encourages you to have a variety of housing types. So we believe that the townhomes will provide that variety for the many employees. I thought it was really important to show you where the South Florida Baptist Hospital was in a little more graphic representation. If you see the property that is outlined in green, which is blank, that's our property. And you can see that the South Florida Baptist Hospital has actually taken that commercial area and expanded it over to the east. So you can see the close proximity of the hospital and the townhome project that we're proposing. We do believe that it's compatible with the surrounding areas. I know that you aren't considering the planned development today, but I did want to just touch on the fact that we are incorporating site design elements to ensure that compatibility. And so you'll see those when we come before you with the planned development. As Mark mentioned, the Planning Commission staff and Planning Commission does find this consistent with your comprehensive plan. There were a couple other things that you noted, and I just want to make sure that I address those for you. School concurrency. So when we go forward with our project, we're intimately familiar with school concurrency, and we've already had lots of discussions with Amber Dickerson with the school board about this particular project and other projects in this area. When we move forward with a project, if there is not adequate capacity, we will be required to enter into a proportionate share mitigation agreement, and we will be required to actually pay the amount that it costs to site a student in that school. So we'll have a tri-party agreement between the developer, between the school board, and between Plant City. So we would pay that money into a fund. That money has to be allocated to a specific school that is cited on the school board's 5-year work plan. So they already have to know where that money is going. And so it will be assigned to that specific school. So not only will the developer have to pay for that impact, but it will be allocated to a certain school that the school board decides is appropriate for this particular location. I can answer more questions about that if you want. I know it's kind of a complicated issue, but I just wanted you to understand that that's how the school capacity would work. Now, I do understand that elementary and middle school have sufficient capacity for this project, and high school is running out of capacity. In discussions with Amber Dickerson, they are actively looking for a site. The North Park Isles development does have a condition in their zoning that requires that a new school site for a high school is to be provided as an option for the school board within 2 years. So I think having all of these developments work together to solve that school siting issue is important for you to understand as well. So our entire team, development team, engineers, as well as the folks, Dean Hill and Kent Holman, that will be developing the site, we're here to answer questions, both on the comp plan, and if you have any site design questions that you'd like us to address, we're happy to do that. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Stand by. Let me see if there's
Yes, sir.
questions. How tall are these townhomes that you're proposing? 1 story, 2 story?
35 feet, 2 stories, sir. I'm not sure how much is that. You can see that.
So these are the proposed elevations, the renderings that you'll see when we come before you for the site development, probably next month or sooner.
Okay. Mr. Burris?
I've got a question, and I'm gonna probably ask this question for a lot of residential units moving forward, because I felt like we've had two properties that were presented to us as family dwellings for sale, and then one entity came in there and bought them all, turned them all into rentals. Is it your plan that these will be sold to individuals or to one entity, and that one entity will turn them all into rentals? What's your thoughts?
I believe the answer is it's absolutely going to be fee simple, but I'm going to look back to Dean and Kent. They're nodding, yes.
Okay.
They will be sold as individual units, fee simple units to the ultimate homeowner.
The reason I ask that question is I'm very concerned about, housing and affordability and ownership in our community versus, I think there's an opportunity for rental needs also. So I think there's a balance. So I just want
Absolutely.
to ask that question. Okay.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
of course.
Any other questions for the applicant? Yes, sir. Mr. Thurston?
So just, I think it makes, I'm saying what you've already said, but just making sure. So there will be an additional hearing where we'll look at the comp plan. And then those will theoretically, those two approvals will go together for the city commission.
Right, so you'll hear the plan development rezoning application, I believe, next month.
Okay.
Is that correct, Robin? April, at the end of April? She's crossing her fingers. We're hoping it's next month.
Got it.
So we'll be back, and so we'll provide you with a lot more detail
Right.
regarding site design at that hearing. But of course, we already have our submittal in, so if there's any questions that you have specifically. But yes, to answer your second question, City Commission will consider both of these items at the same time for ultimate adoption and approval.
Any other questions of the applicant from the board?
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much. for
Mrs.
your time.
Betzel. Appreciate it. All right, we'll now open it up for any public comment, any citizen input on this item. If you would, please step forward and identify yourself. In case there's any shy people, would you please step forward at this time for the public comment? I'll ask one more time and then I'll close. Any public comment? Okay, that closes public comment. Thank you all very much. Anything else that the staff wishes to add on this? Any further commentary? An applicant, I assume that's sufficient for everything you wanted to say? Yeah. Okay. All right, board, what's your thoughts? Is it good, bad? Like it, maybe? You want to know more? What's your thoughts? Mr. Burris? I figured you would.
Dude. And it's only because I care about our community, my dad played high school football here in 1957, right? And, my son's a third generation Plant City boy. So I care about our community. And one thing I will tell you as a father in Plant City is my son plays baseball. And for the life of me, I want this audience to know I can't find a baseball field for my child to play baseball on because they're all used up. So we don't need to just be thinking about schools and roads. It's like that type of infrastructure, and I will tell you, I love working with our city parks and recreation. They do everything they can to accommodate us, but we have travel baseball, we have little league. And I will tell you right now, I get to use a field one night a week, and that's the only night I get for practice. And we're going to add more and more homes to our community. And I pray that more children play baseball and football and soccer and other sports. But I'm just telling you, one thing we need to be considering as we do this is, can we get a few more baseball diamonds? Can we get a few more football fields? I think that if we move forward with this project, as much as I'd love to see the hospitals be successful and more housing in Plant City, it's just going to really change the identity of that area. But I also recognize that it's on Park Road right next to the interstate, and it makes sense. It does make sense. If this was probably further down Wilder Road, closer to Knights Griffin Road, it probably wouldn't make sense to me. But since it's close to the hospital, I get it. But the one thing I will recognize, we're going from like 1 residential unit per acre to 2. That's what's surrounding that, to 9. And that's a really big change. And I'll close with this. I'm still concerned that we only recognize people within a couple hundred feet away. My truck's more than a couple hundred feet away. And nobody showed up today. It's probably because nobody knew about it. And now I'm happy to understand more people will learn about this, hopefully through the newspapers and stuff. And because what never seems to happen, or what seems always happen, is the project starts and everybody comes in here, gets excited. Now it's too late. So I just those are my concerns. I will probably most likely support this project because I think the city needs it, but I think our community needs to consider baseball fields and soccer fields and traffic and schools, because we are really changing the identity of our community. And it needs to change. I get it. There's a lot of great things with it, but just, those are my concerns, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Burris. Other thoughts? I have a parallel thought on it, and I think it falls under our comprehensive plan under the label of hometown charm, which the staff did not comment on at all in presenting this. And I think part of the hometown charm is that we do have so many excellent facilities around town that we just don't want to, and as we expand, put a housing footprint on everything. You know, we part of our charm is being able to easily access tennis courts, basketball, baseball, and all these other things. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. Other thoughts?
Just.
Go ahead. I recognize Ms. Carr.
Following in that bigger planning, I'm wondering if that's something that the staff really, proposers, developers come to us. We have the comprehensive plan, which is a big blanket, but whether or not we are internally looking at what Jeremy mentions, what we want the comprehensive plan to look like on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
So that, when you talk about those things, are they kind of pre-identified so that developers or the recreation, could be invited to take a look at that instead of it happening the way that it is. It seems like that's one way to plan on a smaller scale for the things that you're talking about.
Good point. All right. No other thoughts? What's the pleasure of the board?
Move for approval, find it consistent with the comprehensive plan.
So we have a motion to move for approval by Bonnie Carr. Is there a second to the motion?
Also.
We have a second from Mr. Rodwell. Any discussion of the motion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burris,
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all for being here for the presentation. Okay. We'll see you next month, we hope. The next group of items falls under our quasi-judicial public hearing. So if you are staying for that portion of the meeting, you need to be sworn in. And so if you plan to speak on the next several items, would you please stand up, and the clerk will administer an oath.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The first item is PB 20-31, which is identified as Summer Creek Downhome preliminary work. This is going to be continued, but I believe, I'll check with the attorney, in order to continue it properly, we would need a motion to continue it. Yeah.
Was this noticed already? Is it possible there could be citizens in the public that may have appeared based on notice?
I don't think it, well, no one called in, so let's see who.
No.
Yes, it was noticed.
Okay, so before, okay, so
It was continued from last month.
okay, so there may be somebody here. Before you continue, I would just suggest ask the question.
Okay.
Anybody in the public who wants to speak.
Okay, and then check with me on what the correct protocol is. All right, we'll give the opportunity for public comment on this item. This is called the Summer Creek Townhomes Preliminary Plat. Is there anyone here that would like to make a comment from the public? Yes, ma'am. We can remedy that. So would you like to speak? Madam Clerk, would you please administer the oath to this lady?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Alice Griffin, and I was here last month.
I think I recognize you, Ms. Griffin.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Thank you. We're continuing, and so my question is this so that we can see the plat, a proposal of that? Is that what I'm seeing? And if so, at that point, are they determining how they're going to treat the waterway? That's my concern.
Okay.
So.
I'll see if we can't get that identified.
And do we receive notification whenever these meetings are forwarded to the next month? Because I did not receive one,
How close are you, do you think you are to the applicant's property?
probably 50 foot.
Okay, thank you.
So I would really like to get that because sometimes I'm not really right available. And then sometimes I may be totally out of the state. So if we could, I'd like to get that letter.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Can we get a comment from staff on how broad the proposal we'll see next month, what will it include? Yeah,
Ross Heinstetter, planner with the city of Plant City, they have been sworn in.
thank you for being.
The applicant has proposed different changes to the preliminary plat. So I guess, from what I understand, they changed builders. So they're having to kind of reconfigure the plat a little bit. So they haven't sent like a resubmission yet. I'm still waiting for that. But they sent me kind of like potentially what they're going to propose. So I can definitely send it to the resident here, just so she has a kind of idea of what is happening. But it should still be around the same number of units, which was about 88 townhomes.
Yeah,
So
right.
they just have to reconfigure it. So I don't know all the details yet because I haven't.
Okay, so it's sort of a change in circumstances for the applicant, so they want to resubmit.
Correct.
Okay. And is notice of every month sent to, even if there's a continuation, is notice sent every month or only under certain circumstances? Yeah.
I believe it's noticed for the first, and then if it continues, it does not get noticed again. If it's a date certain.
A date certain
Right.
continuance.
Correct. So I don't know, I know it says on here April 28th, but if we continue it to a not date certain, because I don't know if they're going to make this date, then at that time I'd have to renotice.
Okay, so once you have we may make a motion that leaves it open-ended, but once you know when it's going to come before us, then you notice everybody within the 200 feet.
250, yes.
That was my question. So I guess what is the reason for leaving or continuing it? Not to start, I guess we don't want to start over?
I mean, I guess that would be the idea, but if you think it would be better for them to notice, so the people around.
But definitely want people to know, that my concern is they don't want to keep saying, we're moving it to April 28th.
Understood.
And then that's not do anything with this. I don't want to just, this is the second time now?
Yes.
It could be a third time. So I just don't want to keep pushing it back. So I guess my question is, why don't we just stop it, and when they're ready and get everything submitted, then we put it back on.
Or we could
And
approve
bring
it
it
as
to everybody.
approve it as a date, uncertain, because that would require it to be renoticed.
Correct.
And it doesn't, and then at that point, we're not having to see this again until it's ready to be presented.
Okay. So with a date uncertain, they would get the notice back out?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
They would get the notice when the date becomes certain.
When it's certain, okay, okay.
That's what I heard earlier.
Yes.
So,
And that avoids the potential of us continuing it again if they're not ready by April 28th.
And the people come here for no reason.
Well, who's driving the date? Is the applicant deciding and then not being ready, or is staff just kind of rescheduling and then reaching out to the
So in
applicant?
this case, 2 days before we had to have the resubmission in, they said that they wanted to change the preliminary plat a little bit, and staff was not comfortable with having such short time to review it. So we did choose the 28th, but I guess we're not really certain when they're going to actually have it in. They said they're going to try to do it as quick as they can, but
Sounds like date uncertain.
yeah, I'm comfortable with the date uncertain, because we have the understanding that when the date becomes certain, property owners are notified.
correct, within 250 feet.
Okay.
So, Mr. Attorney, City Attorney, what's the
Sure,
correct?
what I believe to be the concurrence of the board. In all fairness to staff, they need to have enough time to review
Sure.
the project when it comes in. So for them to schedule something, you don't know when you're going to get it. puts you in a difficult position. I definitely, I don't think it should be scheduled until you've gotten it and reviewed it and you're ready to proceed as you normally would. I concur with what I believe to be the unanimity of the board.
Okay, so then we need a motion to continue this to a uncertain date.
Yes.
That's item PB 2020-31.
I'll make a motion to continue item PB 2020-31 to a date uncertain.
Second.
We have a motion, Mr. Thurston, a second by Mr. Driggers. Any discussion of the motion? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burris,
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell.
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes 7 to 0. Thank you all very much for your work on that item. Next item is PB 2021-06, Park Square Plan Development Modification, North Park Road. And we have a staff presentation by Ms. Baker. Welcome.
Good morning, Robin Baker, Senior Planner with the Planning and Zoning Division, and I have been sworn in. The next application before you this morning, 2021-06, is for the Park Square PD modification. The site is located on the west side of Park Road, east of Maryland Avenue, and south of East Sam Allen Road. Future land use on the property currently today is residential 6 and commercial. This property is currently going through a land use amendment, which you have already seen, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. Existing zoning on the site is planned development district. The project was originally approved in 2006 as a mixed-use project approved for 180 townhome units and 5,000 square feet of commercial uses. It's hard to tell on this map. This is the current approved PD plan, but up on Park Road is where the square footage of commercial is located. This is an overall view of the current site plan that's been submitted. And just like we do with all the PD modifications, I'm going to take you through each change so you understand all the changes that are being made to the site plan. So the first request is to change the name. This one was approved back when we called them community unit districts. So the applicant is proposing to change the name from Park Square Community Unit District to Park Square Plan Development District. The second change is a change in residential use and an increase in density of that residential use. The applicant has requested a change from townhomes to multifamily apartment buildings with an increase in total number of units from 180 to 340. A companion comprehensive plan, which is PC-CPA 20-04, was filed by the applicant, is requesting to change the future land use on the property from Res 6 and commercial to Res 20. Now, one thing that we told you about when this was presented to you before, that half of the property is that commercial future land use, which does allow the 20 units per acre under that current designation, but they are requesting for Res 20 over the whole property. The third change is an increase in requested commercial square footage. The applicant is proposing to increase the requested square footage from 5,000 square feet to 17,227 square feet, which is basically the max that the 0.35 FAR allowed under the R20 would allow. It should be noted, though, that in the process of our transportation study, when the applicant was asked what type of commercial use they wanted to use for the study, the applicant chose a 3,400 square foot car wash. Should the commercial portion of the property develop as anything other than the requested size and use, an updated traffic study would be required at the time of the construction plans, just to make sure there aren't any further improvements that would be required for that use. There is an overall change in the site layout to accommodate new building types and to increase the amenities on site. Again, on the left-hand side, that's the current layout with the townhomes. And on the right, you'll see a little bit more open space that's allowed by putting those apartment buildings towards the center of the property. And these are, the majority of the buildings are proposed to be 3-story, with one being 4-story to accommodate the clubhouse on the bottom floor. And then the smaller pictures there to the top are just some of the areas on the site. They're proposing a dog park, a pavilion and recreation park towards the middle of the site. And then they are proposing to put benches and such around the water feature in the middle for the residents. Yes, sir.
I don't have my glasses on. Those three rectangles that are on the bottom left-hand side, the one that's kind of stands alone, and there's two along the bottom edge there. I can't read the identification on those.
Okay, so the smaller buildings are garages. There'll be freestanding garages for cars to park in.
Those rectangles I see on the
He's talking
bottom,
about the larger ones.
the larger blocks.
I think that's something else.
Yeah, I think that's the property to the south.
So-
All of the project
Okay.
itself is shaded in gray.
Okay, okay.
Everything
So
else.
those
are
are all,
color.
those are carve outs. Okay, I got you. Okay.
These were the renderings of the apartment buildings that were submitted by the applicant. These are the colored renderings of what the buildings could look like. And then they also submitted these type of rendered drawings that show the 4-story building versus the 3-story buildings and what those might look like. A transportation study was conducted by the city's transportation consultant, and it was determined that a 190-foot southbound right turn lane into the site would be required if approved by Hillsborough County, as Park Road is a Hillsborough County owned and maintained roadway. A specific approval is being requested as part of this application. Normally in our code, it's required to have 40 feet between buildings. And they are asking for a reduction down to 30 feet for some of the buildings, citing the reason for that request being to maximize the open space around to create those amenities and parks. And as part of that, that's where those proposals for the benches and areas around the water feature came in, to maximize the space around those buildings instead of in between the buildings.
Did you initiate that, or did the applicant say, I'll give you all this open space if you'll let me go to 30 feet?
Well, it's just part of that specific approval process that if they are going to ask for a variation to the code, they have to give us a justification for approving it. You
Okay,
know,
so it's part
it
of
would be just like having the variance done. You have to justify a hardship or tell us what you're doing to enhance the site that would make us want to give you a reduction to the code. And so that was
Okay.
their proposal.
Thank you, I understand.
This is just a close-up view of just the building site, so you can see it a little closer. One thing I wanted to point out is on Maryland Avenue, there are no access points on Maryland. There is just an emergency access only there. So the cars accessing the apartment complex will come and go from Park Road, not from Maryland Avenue. Yes, sir.
That's not far enough up to hit St. Allen Road at all, is it? So,
It's just south of Sam Allen Road.
I just found a good map on the very beginning.
okay, all right. Sorry, Robin.
Oh, no, you're fine.
That's a good question.
I was thinking about going, okay, there's just land up there.
Yeah, there is
Thank you.
lots in between.
Yes, ma'am, I thought so. I was just making sure I wasn't missing nothing. Okay.
And then one of the things that was coordinated with Hillsborough County and with the hospital site is there was, used to be a median on Park Road that is now being relocated south to accommodate this development and the hospital to use the same median opening. So that's why the access shown on Park Road on this side is so far to the south on this property, because they're trying to line up with that hospital entrance. Your baby. It doesn't like me all of a sudden. Oh, there we go. Staff noted in the staff report the following positives, negatives, and mitigating factors. The applicant is only showing access to the site from Park Road. I know we had some concerned citizens that called that were very concerned about access on Maryland. So we saw that as a positive, that they were only proposing access on Park Road, which is also, we've talked about earlier in this meeting, the vicinity to the I-4 interchange and that sort of thing. The request is in line with the preferred land use scenario of the Northeast Master Plan. This applicant has submitted materials committing to the look of the proposed apartment buildings. The negative aspects in staff's opinion was just basically this is a large bump in density to be located near so many lots that are larger with only 1 unit per acre allowed in Hillsborough County. But one thing that we noted in the mitigating measures is that if you noticed on that site plan, all of those buildings are pulled kind of towards the middle of the site. And so when staff measured, the first building is almost 100 feet from Maryland Avenue. So by pulling those buildings sort of centered around that water feature, even though it is a large bump in density, they are providing a large buffer around the outside for the majority of those properties. And then again, one of the mitigating measures was the applicant committing to what those buildings were going to look like, so we could have a chance to see that up front. So based on those items, staff recommends the planning board find the modification to the Park Square plan development be found consistent with Article 4, Division 9 of Chapter 102 zoning, I think that's supposed to be 8, of the Plant City Code of Ordinances and the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan, and for it to be forwarded to the City Commission with a recommendation of approval. I'm here if you have any questions.
So under what was approved, I think in 2006.
Yes, sir.
Again, how many units were approved that already are approved?
It was 180 townhome units,
And they want to go to with this 180 to
340 apartment
240.
units.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Okay. Let me recognize Mr. Jones for a question.
The Art mentioned the cutout. There's a couple cutouts there. It looks like one of them has I think maybe a home on it.
Give me 1 second, Robin.
And I think there's a street over there. I can't tell where that cutout, it looks like we're going right around the cutout with this.
Yes, the way the property is designed, there is, it's hard to tell on the presentation, but there is access along that little piece that goes out to the road for those homes to the south. And there's an OR booking page that's listed there on the site plan. And there's also a note to say that that will not be used for access to the apartment complex, that is only for, those lots to the south. And then also, if you notice on the site plan, to the north side of that little finger that sticks out, you'll see that their landscape buffer continues right across the top of that.
That's what I want to make sure that I'm having problems seeing where that is. But there is a landscape buffer around it.
There is. So if you look at building 3 and 4, can you see that on the screen?
I see that.
Look just to the south of that. You'll see a label that has 2 arrows. That's for where the roadway is going to go. And then just south of that is a 10-foot landscape buffer. That's those 2 dashed lines that go around basically the whole perimeter of the property.
Okay, and so these 2 bottom cutouts that I'm seeing that Art mentioned earlier, there's 2 on the very bottom. That's where the residential homes are currently, correct?
Correct, but it's not part of this project.
Okay, and then the box above there to the left, that one is a residential property, correct, for the home?
Correct. I believe it's zoned R1, yes.
Okay, and then so what'd you say is going on, and so that's their driveway to the homes in the middle. Why is that part of this project?
It's just owned, it's part of the property. And so it's always been part of this project, which is why it's still included. But that's why staff made them label it that it would not be used as access for the project.
Okay.
And then they cited the OR booking page there for the access easement that's in place on that project.
So that's what we can't read, so that's what it says there. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Question.
Recognize Ms. Carr.
When we look at, there's single-family homes, and then there's a huge development. The flow of that seems a little awkward to me. And I guess this gets back to what's the impact of the hospital to, are we looking just at the hospital? Are we looking at the neighborhoods that are in, how close does this get to impacting those neighborhoods? So, while we approved one size development, is this increase being driven by the hospital again? Or, because it's obviously a compromise to the single family homes.
Absolutely. It's the grand planning question of compatibility. What is compatible? And I think you would get a different answer from every single planner you talk to, because some people think that residential against residential is compatible, So for me personally, we look at the fact that number one, half of this property already bordering part of those residential units to the south was already designated commercial, which would have allowed 20 units per acre prior. If the change to residential 20 is allowed or approved later next month, then that would cover the entire property. So that's what I was trying to explain in that mitigating measures, is that it's one of the things I had to look at, because yes, we are talking about apartments up against 1 unit per acre in the county. But so I start looking at how far are those buildings? Are they providing buffering? Are they doing things to try to help mitigate against that, the intensity that you're going from 1 unit to 20 units per acre? And staff was eventually satisfied that they were, by drawing the buildings in, because if you look at what was approved before, even though it was only 180 townhomes, when you look at that layout compared to this layout, to me, that layout was more intense than having, 12 buildings that are spread out and kind of towards the core of the property. And that was my justification for it. I don't know if we can go back and show you that original.
Those are probably all 1 story on the original, correct?
Well, they were townhomes, so they could be 2 to 3 stories.
Oh, they
Depending
could.
on the type of townhome, because a lot of the townhomes nowadays have garages on the bottom and then
Yeah.
2 floors above. So they could be up to 3
Okay.
stories tall.
Okay.
So as you can see there on that current, I know it's small and it's hard to see, but you can see that there are units to every corner of the site plan,
Probably was a square footage differential, though. Those were probably had maybe a larger square footage per unit than what these apartments are gonna have.
Well, basically what we would limit is they can have no more than 8 townhomes in 1 building.
Yeah.
So townhomes are generally, 20 to 40 feet wide.
Yeah.
So times 8 is about how wide the building itself could be, up to 3 stories tall, So it didn't leave a lot of room for recreation space or any buffer in between those outside uses. So to me, I felt like even though you've got a bigger building and it's taller, by being able to bring them together, it was a little less intense covering the entire site. But again, it's just my opinion. But if the future land use change is approved, it would, it meets the code. So staff is recommending approval.
Robin, you referenced the future land use approval, and I see in the notes here that it was supposed to be voted on by the commission on Monday. Is that not?
Was going to bring that up, and that
Okay.
was a mistake on my part.
Okay.
It's actually April 26th.
Got it. So
not
we're still
March
waiting on that.
22nd.
Okay. So what if our approval is, in theory, our approval or recommendation would still be tied to this change happening as well?
It is.
Okay.
The future land use change was already brought to the board and it was approved by this board,
Right.
changed to residential 20. But ultimately it has to be approved by the city commission. And so when it went to the city commission, they decided to continue it because they wanted to wait and see what the PD was going to look like before they made that decision. And so now they'll line up together next month.
Okay, so this recommendation will go together with the future land use change.
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Question, words have meaning. We use the word apartment. This is going to be rental property. This is not owner occupied.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Just, I mentioned earlier when our county was here, just one of the questions I have, one of the problems I have is amenities, roads, schools and parks. Was on the Little League board for years, and it took us multiple years to get batting cages built. And thank goodness the city was able to help us. But I think just to get batting cages built was like $160,000. So I'm going to imagine what's going to cost to build baseball and soccer and stuff. But is the city, or do you know of any project coming along soon to help make my decision easier to vote for these big projects in terms of parks for our children? Do we have a project coming along the line anytime soon that it's going to help? I mean, we're not going to have like 2 baseball fields now. We're going to need 15, right? Maybe not just baseball, but soccer and volleyball and stuff, basketball. But do you know if the city's going to be working with that too as we're building all these homes?
I do not know any particular recreation in that way. I know that we have a very large McIntosh Park that's going through a huge renovation. That'll be more for walking trails and that kind of thing.
Right.
But I do know that the city manager is looking at all of those things.
Yeah.
He's asked us to look at some things to make sure that we look at all of those caveats. We're looking at transportation, we're looking at parks and recreation to make sure that we know these are all the projects that have been approved.
Right.
This is when we think they're going to be built out. Are we good?
Yes,
You know,
ma'am.
I know that he's looking at that now. So
Okay.
hopefully in the near future, we'll have some answers on that and where the needs are
Right.
and be able to move forward.
I think the facilities we have now are just absolutely top notch and amazing, but I just know that, you know, there could be a need for not just, I'm thinking baseball, but it could be basketball, right, or tennis. So I'm just making sure. Okay,
Yes, and I
thank
know
you.
they're redoing our tennis facilities and they just expanded across
Yeah.
from Otis and Andrews,
Right.
right? All of that, they added new baseball fields and
Right.
all that. And then they are upgrading the tennis facilities and then we just got the new community center as well. So
Okay.
there's been a lot done for the Parks and Recreation
Right, yeah, a
Department
lot.
this last year, just not baseball fields. but
Yeah.
Maybe we can work on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
In
Any
the,
other
in the
questions?
normal scheme of things, how is parkland created? Do you, I would think maybe when some big developer has a piece of land and wants a favor, you can say, well, you can get the favor, but we want you to donate these acres. Well, you know, quid pro quo, that's a bad word too. But
I think a lot
Is
of our
that-
parkland has been donated. You know, Jack Collin could probably answer a lot of those questions for you. He's the director of our Parks and Recreation Department.
is that the normal
I know-
process? Because I never see an item in the city budget to buy land to make a park. And so it looks like we sort of come upon it is what it looks like.
That might be out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I want to answer that because I'm not sure exactly.
That kind of gets to the heart of Mr. Burris's question, though. If we pack in all this land with homes, where we're going to be the baseball fields?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where else,
How do we acquire them?
Any other
So
questions?
you're not going to get an answer today.
That's okay. No, that's, and again, I mean, at the end of the day, there's other apartments not far from that area, up on, you know, Park Road and Frontage Road. So,
Yeah, and that was the other key factor in our decision
Oh.
was its proximity to the I-4 interchange. And, you know, if in the grand scheme of things, that's where those commercial corridors are, those more intense developments. That's where we want them to be, is near those I-4 interchanges. And so that was another factor in our decision of whether this was compatible in this area or not.
Okay, good discussion. Any other questions for staff? Thank you,
Thank
Ms. Baker. The applicant, is there someone, representing the applicant? Please come forward, give us your name and address and state for the record that you've been sworn in.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Linda Stewart, I'm a planner with Morris Engineering, 6997 Professional Parkway in Sarasota. And I am representing the applicant who is present. If you have any questions for him as well, it's Park Square Plant City, Mr. Todd Taylor.
I need a statement from you that you've been
I have
sworn in.
been sworn in.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think it's going to work for me as well today. Okay, here we go. The property is 18.14 acres with 17 of that being the residential area that we calculated our density towards. As previously been stated, we are currently awaiting the comp plan amendment with the commission. It has already been through this planning board with a 6-0 approval for the density at 20 units per acre. It's located on the west side of North Park Road and south of Sam Allen. We are requesting the changes as noted by Robin for the project name, the use from townhomes to multifamily apartments. The total unit count will go from 180 townhomes to a maximum of 340 multifamily apartment units. The commercial square footage will increase to the FAR of 0.35, just along North Park Road. That will be the only commercial area for the property, and a change in the development layout. And we believe they're consistent with the comp plan and the land development code. We are also requesting removal of a couple of conditions from the previous approval on the property, since it has been a little bit of time and some of the things have changed in the area for the offsite utility extensions that we were required to do since North Park Isle Development is putting in those extensions. We had a requirement for some entrances because of a previously assumed Walmart that was going to go in, which is now where the hospital is. And we have coordinated with Hillsborough County and the hospital for the driveway relocation, as noted previously, so that we could both align and have the same cut through on North Park Road, and the requirement to remove, for us to put a signal in at Park Road and Frontage Road, as that's already been installed. This is the property in yellow as PD. As you can see, we are across from the hospital where the PD PB 2020-27 is located. They also have a small sliver of property just to the north of our commercial area on North Park Road. They said they are going to leave that vacant at the present time during their hearing that they just had in front of the City Commission. We are already zoned the PD. We are only asking for a modification on that at this time. And as you have seen, this is our current layout for our site plan. We have a water retention area in the middle. We have a 1.22 acre wetland area that bisects the property north and south with some minor impacts to the wetland, and that'll be coordinated with EPC during the site plan approvals. And that small sliver that you guys were wondering that goes out to North Maryland, that is in our open space calculation. So that will not be developed upon, and that is the entrance for those two parcels just to our south. We have the emergency access only on North Maryland, since it's not built to county standards and there is no additional right-of-way to be to have an extension or a widening of North Maryland through there. So we only have emergency access. Our main access is on North Park Road. We have requested one special approval, as noted, to have the building separations from 40 feet to 30 feet. That also allows us to have, the cluster in the middle. We have a larger area separating us from the adjacent parcels with our perimeter buffers and the recreational areas. It creates a larger open space and internal capture for the residents so that they have on-site recreational amenities and they don't have to go off-site. These are the recreational areas that we have pointed out with the benches, the dog park with a covered pavilion, two different recreational areas, as well as a clubhouse on the first floor of Building 1. The development is within, close proximity to the I-4 corridor. We are sensitive to the adjacent uses. We have the perimeter buffer surrounding the property of 10 feet. We have the emergency access on North Maryland only, the driveway realignment in conjunction with the hospital. We have agricultural and commercially zoned properties adjacent to us, and with the entire corridor of North Park Road with the commercial areas. The city had also commissioned a study in 2018 called the North Alexander Street Land Use and Marketing Study for residential units, and there was zero capacity for apartment buildings within the city of Plant City. So these 340 potential units could help fill that need within Plant City that the study showed that there was a lacking. We believe that we are consistent with the comp plan, with the future land use having already been through this board with a 6-0 approval, and it is just currently awaiting our rezoning application to be married with it at the City Commission to be heard together. We are in the Northeast Master Plan area with a long-term goal to create a livable environment and enhancing the hometown charm of the area. We are nearby with I-4 and the North Park Road interchange, so that it'll make it easier for people to get to work and shopping areas. And the public utilities are existing to serve the development. They are going to be working with the utility department to increase the sewer capacity within the area, and those discussions are ongoing at the current time. As you've seen, this is an elevation rendering of potentially what the apartment building will look like. This is being provided by the current proposed developer of the property. And we respectfully request approval. We believe that we are consistent with the adjacent units, with the adjacent uses, the comp plan. We do not believe it will create an undue burden, crowding beyond the corridor. And we will not have an adverse impact on the public health, safety, and welfare, the quality of life. The public facilities and utilities will not be unduly burdened. And we have adequate capacity once we solve the wastewater problem. And staff has recommended approval, and we are here for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Mr. Grigger, do you have a question?
I have a question. Do you have a diagram that includes your parking? I mean, I know you're asking for us to allow you to put the buildings closer together for more open space, but I look at the diagram you have here, and personally, I'm thinking all the open space is going to be used for parking.
We do have 10 to 20% of the area will be used for garages as well.
But I'm asking, do you have a diagram that's going to show not only the buildings, but the parking layout?
During the site plan approval process, they will come up with all that layout.
So we'll be coming back to us again
Yes.
for a site plan, and you'll show parking at that point? No, won't be. So you may not get to see it, Mr. Grigger.
Yes.
Mr. Burris?
One of the questions I always ask is, do we know what type of attendance, like, will this be a subsidized opportunity at all for our community, or just be, regular rents? What type of a audience do you think we'll be going after?
Yes, Mr. Taylor can.
Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions, Ms. Stewart? Okay, come forward, sir. Please give us, for the record, your name and address, and state that you've been sworn in.
Thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Todd Taylor. It's 1035 Casando, Tampa, Florida, 33613.
And you've been sworn in.
I've been sworn in. So the question was again, I'm here to help with any questions that you might have.
There was a concern about.
Oh, the parking.
Parking.
Okay, so there's a site plan that's been submitted, preliminary, of course, and I believe we meet the code as far as like 198 parking spaces, so there is adequate parking. So why you see not all open space there's going to be parking spaces in most of that.
Mr. Burris?
Just my question was about occupancy. I know sometimes you'll have an apartment complex that's subsidized, or a portion of it subsidized, or none of it subsidized. It's just trying to get an idea, because we've got, our community's got, different income brackets, if you will. I'm just kind of curious that, up down the road, we have townhomes that may or may not be affordable. What type of apartments or clients you see having there?
Okay. So I've been involved with this property since 2005 when it was purchased and rezoned into the townhouse project. 2008 happened and my partners went away. Unfortunately, I was able to stick around for a while. The apartment developer that has the project under contract is a former partner of mine. I will be staying in as a partner in the project. We have already applied to HUD for approval. They designated this area in Plant City as their hot area to fund an apartment site, which is the one that we've applied for. And so it will be market rent rates, just as a normal, if you went to Bank of America to get a loan, but it's a HUD approval. So it has a lengthy process that they have. We're looking to have approval from HUD sometime in the next 2 months to go full bore with financing. Construction plans have already been started. What Ms. Stewart had talked about was the max 340 units. Right now, the current layout on there is 292 units. If we were prior to requesting the comp plan change, I think the max that we were going to be able to get on the site was like 225 units, Mark, something like that. Something like that. It was 11 acres of commercial at 20 units per acre, and then it was 7 acres of residential at 6 units per acre. So the actual bump up isn't to that 340 from 180. It's actually a bump up from where we could have been at 230 to like 290. Mrs. Stewart addressed the 2018 North Alexander Street market study that was done, and it said, we need apartments in Plant City. And so this location, and we started the planning process from apartments prior to the notice that the hospital was going in. So this was all being planned and generated prior to the announcement and approval of the hospital site. So, Mr. Burris, to your question, it will be a HUD finance project, but it will be market rates.
Okay.
Question.
Ms. Carr.
Similar developments like this that you've done? or-
Why?
Well, yes,
Well,
or the group that's developing this.
Just
uh,
developed
they-
those. They've done
yes.
6 other ones, yes.
In this general area of Florida?
They're presently finishing one in St. Pete. They've done one in South Tampa. They've done another one in Raleigh, another one in Charlotte. But the principal has been a developer here in the Tampa Bay area for the last 25 years. Myself, I've been a developer here in the Tampa Bay area for the past 35 years. I've never done an apartment complex, but I've done 10,000 building lots in the Bay Area. So I've been very active. We've been fortunate in this. This is a great example of the private sector working with the public sector. Robin and her staff have been nothing but more cooperative, and we feel that we've been also as cooperative with the meetings that we've had in adjusting our plans to what the city is looking for to keep that hometown charm, and also that we provide a service to Plant City. Yes, sir.
Question, obviously, we're short on a high school, it looks like. Will a similar scenario with funding, will this project need to put some money aside as also as well?
Same as the attorney for the townhouse site.
Yeah.
I've been in contact with the same people, and we would have to do the same
Okay.
thing.
All right, thank you.
As far as fields, basketball, soccer, I grew up an athlete.
Right.
And I'm very close to that. I've also, that's a subject for another day, but I'm very interested in parks and that sort of thing also. This site doesn't have the capability or size to do it. Other ones coming online, they're a little bit larger. As Mr. Wood indicated before, is that something that is a negotiated point? And at times, it's something that Attorney Buckman and others in the staff have done before, is negotiated a ball field or a school site or something within that development.
Thank you.
Follow up to Mr. Burris's question on who's going to live there. Will it be Section 8 housing?
No, it's market rate.
It is, that's what that implies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whatever competition there is, it'll be the same.
Any other questions for Mr. Taylor? Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
both, Ms. Stewart and Ms. Taylor. Thank you very much. Okay. I'll open it up now for any citizen input, public comment on this proposal 2021-06. Is there anyone here in the audience that would like to speak on this? I'll ask one more time. Is there any public comment on this Park Square 2021-06? Okay, thank you. Closest public comment. Anything further to add from staff? Anything further from the applicant? Anything you might have forgotten? Got it all? Okay. What's the thoughts of the board?
Yeah, I just want to comment. I think when Robin pointed out the change in kind of the format where creating open spaces.
Yeah.
That had a great impact on me.
Yeah.
And looking at, how that was going to impact
Yeah.
the surrounding houses.
Yeah.
So, I guess I want to just say or compliment staff for keeping that in mind, because we do have a need for housing, rental housing, but we do need to blend that and make sure that it is actually
Yeah.
complementing the properties around.
Did you feel too that that plan that was approved in 2006, I wouldn't have
I was
approved
trying
that.
to figure out, I was
that
probably
today.
chair, I don't.
That
I
was
don't
just really
remember.
dense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was.
People, if everybody parked their car in the street, you couldn't get through. Mr. Diggers?
I agree with what Bonnie said, but in looking at this and they're asking for the variance to put buildings closer together, when I look at the layout as it is, to me, it looks like the only reason we're doing this is so that there's adequate parking for the number of buildings they're putting in. You know, when I'm looking at how I'm kind of seeing the final layout to be based on what they're giving us here, most of this open space is going to be parking lot.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, yeah, you've got a nice little green space behind around the water, but around the outside, the outside perimeter, it's got to be all parking. So I don't have any problem with the project itself. I do have a little bit of a problem with the variance. Because the way I'm picturing it, we're just allowing to cram more buildings in the space. And that's basically the net result. I don't really see, for the variance, I don't see any value coming back as far as, usable green space versus parking lot.
Okay, well, there was one chart that showed in little circles, the amenities, I think, that were being created, so.
I'm with Doug on that. May I speak, Markwood?
Yes, sir. Mr.
You know,
Burr?
I was hoping to see, for what it's worth, like maybe in the property to the south, where there's a buffer there, I don't know how much feet are there. But I would certainly like to see almost that be part of this project for some grass for kids to play. Because I'm thinking there's gonna be children playing there and they're gonna be playing in the parking lot, or where they're gonna play. Because we think about what surrounds that area, there'll be nowhere for those children to go. You're not gonna ride your bike up and down Park Road because that'd be very dangerous. And you got the interstate right there. So I was just hoping to see, I'm kind of with Doug, I guess if I saw the parking lot, then maybe I go, oh, you know what, I'm wrong. There is a lot of green space for a child to throw a football or kick a soccer ball, ride his bicycle.
Just looks to walk their dog.
Yeah, I mean, there don't seem to be because we can't see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically, I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see a lot more detail.
Yeah, me too.
Make this decision, because like I say, I can only assume, based on what's left, is a lot of that perimeter's, what else could it be? It's parking lot. And we're giving them a variance in the spacing between the building for more space. But if the space is just parking, I don't feel like that's a fair trade.
Good point. And again, I know we've asked, but this will not come back before us again, correct? Will not.
The detailed section does not come before the
Okay.
board. And certainly if you want the developer to come back with a revised site plan, obviously that would have to be noticed.
Yeah.
They could do that, and they could show the parking in the
Yeah.
areas, if that was the direction of the board.
Right. I'm getting that understanding.
If we decide to sort of ask to see that document, we meet again in 2 weeks, correct?
Yeah, but it may be too late for that meeting. Yeah.
To push the project back, possibly.
Yes, I mean, if you continue to a date certain today, then I don't have to have the notice time. We would just have to have time for them to make the revisions and resubmit. If you did a date certain to the 14th. The other option would be the 28th.
We submitted a document showing the whole space and parking. You have that upstairs?
I don't remember seeing that document.
Yeah, we submitted. I'm sure it's been submitted.
That detailed site plan, if you even do submit it, is not part of the PDA that they're reviewing and approving, they can base it on.
Ms. Carr?
After understanding what Doug says, I think about families, and that would be living here. We typically talk about the families around the area. But that is critical to what's the quality of life of the children, that would be living in the development and I'd hate to think of something like city housing projects where, there's just concrete around you. So, one group of lifestyle is impacted with open space, like Jeremy's kids, and you got 340 other families that are very restricted because we decide to increase the number of units in there. So I would like to see what that layout of the land would provide for the families to be outside. This is Florida. So what would that look like?
Yeah, and the other thing I'll add to it is it's not like a child or an adult has somewhere to go. It'd be one thing if there was a county park or a city park like right there, they've got plenty of room. But I'm telling you, Park Road's gonna be dangerous, and I'm sure it's gonna be fenced in. So again, I was hoping to see some sort of recreation area to the south of that one lot there. I don't know how much road they need there, but just again, I'm leaning with Doug here on wanting to see the parking lot structure. I don't want to delay a project. I don't want to do that to somebody, but I'd love to see the parking.
Is there other feelings, other thoughts? We have three folks here that would like to see a little more detail. Does anyone else feel the same way? You agree?
It'd be nice to see a little bit more what amenities are planned as well.
Okay. Well, at that point, there's a majority of board members that are interested in seeing more detail. Mr. Taylor, do you want to comment?
Yeah, if I could, please. That's all right. I'm sorry that we don't have a more detailed plan. I thought that was included, but I didn't see that until just now. If we could pull that, can we do this? Can we pull that screen up that shows the layout of the apartment sites?
Was it
help step
was it
through.
Ms. Stewart?
I know it's not showing the parking as you're requesting on there, but there's also a 10-foot boundary around the site that's all green space, okay, besides the park. So there is green space.
Yeah, I saw the dashed line show.
Yeah, so
green space.
we've taken that into consideration.
That's
Okay,
that's
so
good there.
this might help. Oh, I can see it right here. How about that? So all the circled areas, you were talking about recreation areas. So if you look at the very northeast corner, which is circled, that's a dog park. So as you know, we love our dogs. We actually are talking about building a pavilion there. So you go play with your dog, go for a walk up there. You'll be able to get out of the shade, out of the sun into the shade. And that'll be a very nice dog park where people could take a walk and the dogs do their duty and whatever, and they have their little social area.
Before you move, what's about the size of that? I'm trying to
The dog
get a
park?
scale. Yeah.
Well, if those buildings are 40 by 8, it's probably eighth of an acre, quarter of an acre. It's not going to be a 10-foot by 10-foot area. It's more like, I don't have it scaled, so it's, probably, a third of an acre, something like that. It's not like everybody's going to be bumping into each other, and hopefully it's going to be post-COVID, so we won't have that worry also.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes, sir.
The property, and I'm trying to work with you, just ask questions.
No, go ahead.
Looks like there's a pond there, right, in the center of the property.
We're digging, yes.
So
we're digging that pond.
So do we know if that's going to be like wet all the time? So the space, so again, so from the building to that pond?
The plans are, with all development, you have SWIFMUD approvals and EPC approvals. So the plans will be for that to be a wet pond all the time.
Okay.
It'll be a retention pond. And as you can see, if you look going north-south, the hashed area that shows the wetlands, it's already been delineated by EPC. We've worked very closely with them. We've kept all buildings out of the setback area of the EPC. Final approval is with them. There is in the middle of that pond, you can see a little narrow ditch. That's called an upland swale. When cattle ranchers would farm the property with their cattle, they would typically run a ditch. And so that's going to be included into the pond, and that's being taken into consideration also. So hopefully that answers your question about being wet. that sort of thing.
No, my question was, is there enough space there in your thought process? But say, for example, it says building 9 and building 8, we're real close to that pond. You know, I don't know if that's 10 feet there or 50 feet from the back of that building to the pond. So my question, I guess, for maybe me and Doug, are we talking a distance from this wall to that wall down there, or only 8 feet? Because if it's 30 or 40, 50 feet, there's enough room for a kid to play
What's the setback?
from the pond.
Do you know what it is, Robin?
Well, I mean, it is a wetland, it's 25 feet.
25 feet minimum.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm just trying to think that, you know, he's gonna have enough space for children to play there too, to give him some green space, so.
Right.
Okay.
So back to recreation areas, if you go from the dog park to the next closest one, which is a little bit south of there, yes, right there, that's going to be pickleball courts and possibly a sand volleyball court, open space, benches, parks, gathering area outside. The smaller areas that are circled as you go around the lake are where park benches and additional landscaping will be going in, so that the residents can walk down to the lake, enjoy the amenities of the lake. There's going to be 2 fountains in the lake, one at each end of it, one to help with aesthetically and one to also move the water so it doesn't become stagnant.
Question, Mr. Taylor?
Yes, sir.
The bench location, does that imply there's going to be a walking trail around the
Yes.
lake?
Yes.
A walking trail,
Yes.
all circle in the lake?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then the main building, which is the one the farthest to the southwest, is, or southeast, I'm sorry, is the 4-story building. And it will contain the rental office as well as the very nice fitness center facilities on the first floor. Back to one of the questions that was earlier about asking for the variance for the 30 feet. Is one, as Robin had mentioned, we're clustering everything in the middle so that we get more green space or parking, but distance from the buildings to the adjacent neighbors. The neighbor to the north has a commercial destination. They're going to build commercial. The neighbor to the south directly is a commercial destination also. Those 2 parcels that are down in the southwest corner, as well as the out parcel there where there's residential homes, I own the property and it has an easement for access to their property. We're not touching that at all. We're leaving it as open space. So in the entire site, we meet the criteria of 35% open space on the entire site. And so we had the opportunity to look at doing 4-story buildings there, but it was my decision to just do the one at the beginning, and the rest of them will be 3-story. And so we could maybe lose a building and go to the 40 feet and then make them all 4-story buildings. My thought process was that it would look nicer. It would be more convenient for residents having a 3-story building versus a 4-story building. And if you'd like to see more park benches and more plants and trees, I'm that kind of person. So if that's a comment that y'all have, then fine.
Mr. Burris mentioned families earlier. Is there a playground for?
Well, the playground is that area that I mentioned where the pickleball and the that sort of thing is going to go in. But right now, the developer has done, little swing sets, that sort of thing in the past. So that's the amenity, because they have to build that to make it sellable, to compete with other projects.
Mr. Burris?
Mr. Taylor, is there an area where, I know you've left that as an easement to the properties to the south of you residentially. So is there an opportunity where some of that could be a place for people to walk a dog, or that can be fenced in?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Hey, Robin, weren't we able to, we're just leaving that open space, correct? So somebody Mr. Burris was talking about the property to the south where the easement is for those 2 residences.
So there could be some green space to the south of that buffer possibly for people to hang out.
Isn't it a road?
No.
There's an easement over the property, so there's going to be some, legal issues for that.
I got you.
Be able to impede that.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the road for those.
Okay, there's a road right now.
Yeah, and the house that's closest to the furthest east property, their road is just past that line. So at one time I had looked at possibly having that open space that could be used for kids to play, throw baseball, throw football, whatever the case may be, go for another place to walk your dog. You can see the dotted hash line above it. That's the actual 10-foot buffer area. We were just kind of buffering more from the residential house that is there. But I don't see there's any reason why we can't use it as walking space. I mean, it's gonna be green, it's the property that we own.
Question. Getting back to the parking, did you identify where you expected parking to be? How much of it?
I can't remember what the number of spaces is that's required, but we met the requirement of parking for the site as it is.
But would it be on the front side?
Well, no,
or
most of
on
the parking is around the perimeter. So again, it's a buffer from those buildings. There's parking, like if you're looking at the north properties, ma'am, buildings 7, 8, 9, and 10, there'll be parking in front of those buildings and there'll be parking across the street from those buildings. And then there's a 10-foot green space buffer that goes between the properties to the north.
So between the buildings and the pond would be open and green space?
Correct, yes. And we've asked for a variance on some of them to be 30 feet versus the 40 feet. And we've added the additional landscaping and the benches, that sort of thing. So for people to go sit and relax or whatever.
Between the clubhouse and building 2 there, you have the wetlands. How will people cross those wetlands? Will it be a bridge or?
No, we're not going across, we're stopping. The road will come in at the bottom, as the Stewart had mentioned before. The road will be on the very south.
Show me the road entrance.
Southeast corner, wherever the cursor went. Do I have that cursor? No, southeast, over here, keep going, there you go. Down here, down the very southeast, there you go. Perfect. That's the entrance to the subdivision.
So you can't, okay, so it's,
you come in there.
it's not a circle, it's a close.
And so, yeah, you're gonna go all the way around the entire site. They'll cross the wetland up there at the top in the north east.
So there'll be some way to cross the wetlands there.
Right there will be. But that's where the upland cut is, the cut that the farmer made 80 years ago. And that's one that EPC's already recognized and they know that we're proposing to do. To the south, where the wider wetland is, when you're talking about building 2 there, there's a cul-de-sac that will happen. There's some parking. You see a garage. She's just pointed at it. There's a garage there. The roadway will go around that garage. And so there's only one way in, one way out.
Okay.
So come into the project and go back out that way.
Okay. Okay.
I see what Doug's talking about. It is hard to envision this without seeing the parking on the site plan. I mean,
Or the roadway.
yeah.
Well, it does have verbiage on there that calls it, I can't read it either.
I can't even read it on that screen, much
Yeah.
less on.
The site plan is just very vague. To me, it should show the parking and show the road so we can see the layout. Again, it's hard to envision this.
Okay, well, again, this has to be approved, you know, per Plant City Planning and Zoning, their approvals as to what works for their blessing of it to allow the site to be developed. I'm sorry I don't show this today. Had I known that that was needed, we would have definitely had that in front of you. You know, it's been a long journey. This was brought before you before, and you all approved it 6-0 at that time, and I appreciate your comments and concerns. I really don't want to hold this up any longer. It was kind of held up last time because they changed from allowing a comp plan to go to the state prior to the rezoning happening, and then they decided they want to do them both together, and I understand why. That's kind of why I'm here explaining that even though we're asking for 340 units, that's because that's what the designation in the comp plan is. That doesn't mean that's how many we're going to build. Right now, we have it laid out for 292 units to be developed. I can get you something by the end of the day. I thought that staff had something, it's our fault for not getting it to them, that shows the parking layout. But if you look at what the existing zoning is on that 180 townhouse, that's dense. That's every bit of the property being used for townhomes, parking, et cetera. And we've been very cognizant to make this a project that is open, that is going to be family oriented, because we're spending millions of dollars to build this thing, tens of millions. And, if it's not successful, then we're not successful. And if we're not successful, then it's kind of a blight that sits there. So we've been doing this for a while, so hopefully it's something that you'll be proud of as we are also.
Let me repeat something that I think has been said, but I just want to make sure everybody understands. Staff feels that they're allowing this closer density, 30 feet, because they are getting some features that they might not have, of some mitigation, a feature they might not have got.
Correct.
And you're saying if you didn't have that 30 feet and you had to go to 40, you would probably make the units one floor larger in order to accommodate the number of units you'd like on the land.
Yeah, we could
Correct?
always go up to the 4-story.
That's what I mean.
And my thought was that the 3 stories was more
Yeah, I
appealing
understand. I
than the
understand.
4-story. And so we worked together with Mr. Buckman and with staff.
Yeah, no, I get it. I just want to make sure I know you said that. I know Robin said what she said. I just want to make sure
All right.
it's out there.
I appreciate it.
Good. You want to say something, Robin?
I did just want to point out that the other part of staff's recommendation is the fact that, yes, they are requesting a reduction, but based on the site plan, it's only needed for 5 buildings out of the 12.
Right.
The other buildings are providing much more than 30 feet in between the buildings. So
Right,
that
right.
was the other thing that we looked at too, was that it
It's not-
wasn't needed for every single building, just a few of them.
I can see that. I can see that. Thanks for
That's-
pointing that out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've gotten some, anything you wanted to add, Ms. Stewart? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, well, we got some, a little bit in depth there on it. What's the comfort level? Do you still want to see a parking layout? Yeah. That would require continuing this, yeah.
That would be my preference, yeah,
Okay.
to see a lot more detail.
Is your preference remain, Ms. Carr? Yeah,
Well,
to see the parking?
I mean, typically we do. So it's a huge development and typically we do.
Okay, I'm kind of asking how you're going to vote on a motion, in effect, without making a motion.
Right.
Mr. Burris?
I agree. I don't think we've seen a project of this size yet without seeing roads. I didn't even see a road. And I'm not saying that once I hate to delay a project, but I think we owe it to our community to do our due diligence.
Mr. Rodwell, you have a?
I do agree with what Mr. Burris just said. Yeah. We need to see the whole layout.
Mr. Thurston?
If that's the pleasure of the board.
Okay, so you're not don't feel as strongly as them.
Not
right?
as strongly, but that's okay.
Yeah. All right, well, who wants to make, let me see if there's anything left I got to talk about. So staff has given adequate time for response, applicants given adequate time for response. So I'm asking for board discussion at this point, and we've had some. Is there anyone willing to make a motion?
Again, I'm not motioning. I'm going back to the discussion, I suppose. It doesn't sound like it doesn't seem like the board is comfortable, moving forward on this without. So is there a motion, would there be a motion to, have something specific to come back with more detail, or, I guess I'm curious on what our options are here.
Well, the motion would be to extend the review to a date uncertain.
You could do it a date certain or date uncertain, depending on, I think he was saying he'd get it to you today, but then you could probably pick a date, but the fact that you don't have it right now, staff would have to have an opportunity to make.
Yeah, I just hate to box the staff into being the first meeting in April when they really might like the second meeting, depending. I don't know.
Certainly if he were to present it to us, to staff today or tomorrow, they could probably get the notices out. It could come up in the next planning board meeting.
The notices will be due 2 days from now, or the 14th.
I'm gonna turn around. What do you want to live with? Because I think the consensus here is we're gonna want to come back in April. So do you want to do what it takes to do the 14th, or do you want to prefer the 28th?
I mean, if they can get it to me today, I have no problem with the 14th. Obviously, staff is recommending approval of the specific approval, so we don't really have any review to do per se. I just need to receive it, and then I can do the notices, but he would have to get it to me today or tomorrow for us to be able to execute the notices on Friday.
And Mr. Taylor's thoughts were that you probably have it already, that he thought he turned it in, something that shows the parking.
Yeah, I was just going to recommend that if we go with date certain, it doesn't need to be renoticed. It was noticed. We don't have anybody from the public here to talk about it. I think it's just, for us to see. So if we want the date certain.
So you're okay with the 14th?
That way it helps them move their project along even quicker. We're not delaying as much.
That's fine with me. The only thing that would have to be renoticed at that time is the CPA, because it wouldn't line up anymore. So we would have to continue the comprehensive plan amendment to a future city commission meeting.
So it
But
would.
the planning commission is set to.
The 12th and the 26th, the hearing date for the comprehensive.
It is. Is that time to do the first reading still?
We could do the first reading now. That's the Wednesday following Monday of the city council.
I mean, usually it's 2 weeks prior to the 26th.
We could do it now.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so you can still,
If there's, obviously, there's this approval by the planning board, at that point, then it would just come forward as the time of hearing.
Okay.
Then we can go, it would just be sitting there. We can go. Right.
Okay, as long as the adoption date, we're still projecting the 26th.
Okay, great.
okay. So would someone like to make a motion that this will be continued until our April 14th meeting?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion from Mr. Burris
I'll
to
second it.
continue the item, second by Mr. Jones. Any discussion or clarification on that motion needed?
So I have a motion to continue to April 14th, 2021.
Correct. Okay. Motion structured properly, Mr. City Attorney? All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burrs,
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. Thank you all for working with us and for your understanding. There's another item left on the agenda, PB 2021-14, Eastland Industrial Plan Development Modification, Charlie Taylor Road. Yes, sir.
Good
Please,
morning.
step,
Again.
yes.
My name is Ross Landsetter, planner with the city of Plant City, and I have been sworn in. As you stated, this final project or item is PB 2021-14 for the Eastland Industrial PD modification. It's located on the west side of North Wiggins Road between North Frontage Road and US Highway 92. The current zoning is PD, Eastland Industrial, and Hillsborough County AS1 Agricultural Single Family. The current future land use is industrial with some I-4 tech corridor overlay and Hillsborough County R1. And they're proposing a land use of industrial, which is subject to PCCPA 20-09. Sorry. And the original project was approved in 2008 and then modified in 2016 and 2018, and is currently approved as approximately 209 acres of 3 million square feet of industrial development. And the site plan on the right is the approved, the currently approved PD. So the applicant proposes to add and rezone 3 parcels totaling approximately 21 acres to the existing planned development. So you can see the existing and proposed, all they're doing is adding the 3 folio numbers and increasing the land area. And on the right, you can see the yellow, which is signifying the 3 parcels that they're adding and rezoning. And to modify the building layout to better preserve the wetlands on the northern portion of Charlie Taylor Road, and to modify the building layout to incorporate the added land on the eastern side of Charlie Taylor Road. And there are no changes being proposed to the number of square feet currently approved, nor modifications being requested for the conditions, the development standards, or other elements to the PD. So the graphic might be a little confusing. So on the right, the maroon is what is already proposed. And then underneath that is what is being proposed or
included.
Sorry, the maroon is what is already approved. And
Yes.
the under is what is being proposed with addition to the 3 parcels. So you can kind of see on the western side, there's like a tract of wetlands that they're removing that one large building to account for that wetland so they don't impact it. So staff recommends the planning board find the modifications to the Eastland Industrial Plan development to be found consistent with Article 4, Division 8 of Chapter 102, zoning of the Plant City Code of Ordinances and the Imagine 2040, the Plant City Comprehensive Plan, subject to PCCPA 20-09, and it be forwarded to the City Commission with a recommendation of approval. That concludes staff's presentation, and the applicant is here also if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Einstetter. Any questions for staff? Thank you, sir. Hi, would the applicant please come forward, identify yourself, give us your address and state for the record that you've been sworn in.
Good morning, Cammy Corbett with the law firm Ward Henderson, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 3700, and I have been sworn.
Thank you.
This is a pretty straightforward PD amendment. We are not adding additional square footage. We are actually adding the 3 new properties, which will provide additional buffer to the residents across the other side of Wiggins Road, and it will just provide an opportunity for more stormwater, and we are trying to reduce the wetlands on the northern parcel. And I'm here for any questions if you have them.
Any questions of the applicant from board? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you being here. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this? Is there any citizen input? This is on PB 2021-14. I'll ask one more time. Yes, sir. Please come forward. Were you sworn in earlier, sir? Okay, well, I'd like to take the opportunity for the clerk to swear you in.
You can raise your hand.
Sure, no problem.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
And would you now state for the record your name, address, and that you have been sworn in?
Okay, my name is Darrell Dempsey. Address is 116 North Wiggins Road.
Good.
And my property.
And you've been sworn in.
And I've been sworn in.
We're having trouble with people remembering that today. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's something in the air.
Okay. Some of my property joins the property that's being added here, so that's why I'm here. And I'm just curious. I don't really have any problem. I think I'd rather see what's going on there now than I would a lot of houses in the area, so I'm not objecting to anything at this point. I'm just curious as far as the property facing Wiggins Road, if there's going to be any construction or any access to the property from there. That's my only question right now.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Would you want to address that or?
Keep it in order and then let's proceed.
Okay. Are there any other public comments, citizen input on this matter? I'll ask one more time. Any other public comment? Okay. Thank you. Would you please step forward and address the concern if you can?
Sure. Cammy Corbett again for the applicant. There is not permanent access on Wiggins Road from this PD development proposed.
Okay, so no emergency access either, just no access.
The only access that is approved is a temporary access that is associated with a land use excavation directly across on the other side of Wiggins Road. That's only for the duration of the special use permit. and
Okay.
that's 2 years. And that's, I actually don't think that we're even going to be utilizing that, but that is an approval, and you want to disclose
Okay.
it. So that's why I said no permanent access. So no access for the industrial development at all.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, we've closed public comment. Is any further comment from staff? Board, any discussion? Any discussion? What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve from Mr. Burris and a second from Mr. Jones. Any discussion of the motion? Is it clear to everyone?
Makes sense.
All right. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burris.
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes that item. That concludes the public hearings. We have a couple of one miscellaneous item here. We have an attendance report to approve, and there were 2 absences which are mentioned in the report. Is there a motion to accept the attendance report?
Move to-
Go ahead. I think I heard Mr. Rodwell and a second from Ms. Carr to accept the attendance report. Any discussion of that motion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll on that?
Board Member Wood,
Yes.
Board Member Burris.
Yes.
Board Member Carr,
Yes.
Board Member Driggers,
Yes.
Board Member Thurston,
Yes.
Board Member Rodwell,
Yes.
Board Member Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the only other business I know of, and I'm going to ask if there's any other, is that we do have 2 April meetings. Apparently, everyone was agreeable to that. And we do have to have a majority here in order for it to be this hybrid style. So, and it's the 14th and then what, 27th, 28th? Yeah, 14 days later. So, so everyone understands that, and everyone's agreeable to it.
My question, Art.
Yes, sir.
If somebody was out of town one of those days, are we going to be able to do the conference
Yes.
center at the present?
No,
Okay.
I just have to make sure a quorum is present,
Okay.
physically present.
Okay.
Which we have. Comments on the agenda? Were we gonna, this is like longer than normal. Any feel, tough meeting, gonna be good? Julie, any feel for how long these meetings are gonna run? Anything like super controversial or anything? Yeah. No? Okay, that's all. So you just have enough in April that you wanted to split it apart so the meetings weren't too long each one. Is that sort of the understanding? Okay.
I will have to leave at 11.
Okay.
On the 14th.
Leave it 11 on the 14th? Okay.
Hopefully get you out.
Ooh, gosh, I hope we don't.
Well, just for the record.
I wouldn't have thought today would have. Somebody came in, I said, well, it's gonna be a short meeting. That was you, what? All right, anything else to come before the board today? Anything else from anybody? Okay, well, thank you all for being here. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.